Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today to talk about the Oscoda Area and former Wurtsmith Air Force Base PFAS update meeting. I'm Mike Gurney. I'm with EGLE's Environmental Support Division, and I'm going to turn the microphone over to Abigail Hendershot in just a minute here. I do want to intro and get into our couple of our quick housekeeping slides. Michelle, if you want to hit the next one, we've got just a reminder that we are recording this webinar. This will be posted on the EGLE YouTube channel within, I'd say usually it's about a week it's up. Hopefully we'll get it in the next few days. All lines are going to be muted throughout the webinar. So if you want to hit the next slide. And so we'll have a couple presentations this evening. We'll get to a question and answer portion. So while we remain muted throughout the presentation, we will have an opportunity to ask questions at the end. You can ask questions throughout the presentations using the Q&A box in your Zoom toolbar. You can also, during that Q&A session, if you'd like to raise your hand, you can do that at the bottom of your screen. You can raise your hand. I do see that we have somebody who's calling in on the phone, so you can do the pound or hash sign and then the number 2. And I'll remind you of that when we get to the question and answer portion. But with that, I'm going to sign off from my speaking duties and introduce Abigail Hendershot, Executive Director of MPART.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Mike, for that. Happy to be here with you tonight. So glad that you guys could join us to talk and just go through an update on Wurtsmith Air Force Base and the surrounding areas. So I want to introduce real quick, if we can go to the next slide. Really quickly, I will be here, but most of the speaking is going to be done by EGLE. So our Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy. Beth Place is our project manager for Wurtsmith Air Force Base, and she will be giving you an update on that project. Puneet Vij is our toxicologist from the Department of Health and Human Services. He is going to go through some health-related information. Thank you, Puneet. And then we will have plenty of time for comments, questions, and answers. So hang tight, and we will get to that stuff at the end. But we're here to answer questions. So I'm going to go ahead, and I think the next slide takes it over to Beth. Beth, you ready to take it away?
Yep. Okay. Just 1 second. Okay. My name is Beth Place. Thank you, Abby. I'm the former Wurtsmith Air Force Base project manager. And sorry, I'm having a little bit of voice trouble tonight, so I'm hoping to make it through. So I'm sorry if it sounds terrible. But anyway, next slide, please. The former Wurtsmith Air Force Base was established in 1923. It had about a 70-year history. It was officially closed in the BRAC decision, base realignment and closure decision of 1991, and then officially closed at the end of June 1993. Most of the acreage has already been transferred for reuse, although the Air Force does still own parts of Wurtsmith. It's just minimal. And Air Force is the lead cleanup agency for any contamination left. The cleanup is being conducted under CERCLA, the Comprehensive Environmental Response and Liability Act. Next slide, please. And I should have added that the state here is also the regulator and the CERCLA support agency. So on this slide, you'll see the installation restoration program sites. These sites were primarily established from environmental contamination, from jet fuel, solvents, like TCE or PCE, to groundwater, soil, or from waste handling practices associated with landfills. Air Force has conducted multiple source removals and remedial actions on this legacy contamination. Land use controls are also in place for protection against the contamination. And just so folks are aware, Air Force is currently preparing their 4th 5-year review. And next slide, please. Okay. So PFAS was discovered at the former Wurtsmith Air Force Base. And when that happened, EGLE conducted soil, groundwater, fish sampling. And EGLE still continues to collect PFAS samples. Again, Air Force is the main cleanup agency under CERCLA. Next slide, please. And so far for PFAS in the CERCLA process for the long-term remedy, Air Force has completed the preliminary assessment, the site inspection phase of CERCLA, and now they're working on the remedial investigation. Air Force plans to have one more field season for the remedial investigation, and that will be this next spring, summertime of 2023. 2023. Air Force has also conducted other PFAS responses. They completed a focused feasibility study and installed FTO2 pump and treatment system as a removal action. Additional removal actions include treating the discharge from the existing aero and benzene pump and treat systems, and treating that discharge at the central treatment system for PFAS. They also did a removal action on time critical at the end of 2019 for the Mission Street discharge from that treatment system. And those treatment systems, aero, benzene, and Mission, were originally installed to treat volatile contamination from legacy contaminants. And now that discharge is being treated for PFAS. Soil removal for PFAS has also been conducted at FTO2. And 2 interim remedial actions that were recently installed were the expansion of the FTO2 pump and treatment system at Clark's Marsh, and the expansion of the central treatment system, which included extraction wells along Van Etten Lake near Ken Ratliff Memorial Park. Additional sampling that Air Force has agreed to conduct is sampling the effluent from their engineered wetland treatment system at LF 3031, and that sampling will begin quarterly for sampling for PFAS. Next slide, please. At the last Restoration Advisory Board meeting, which is an Air Force hosted meeting in November, Air Force announced, we knew it was in the works, but they announced some details on an additional interim remedial action, or IRA, that they'll be conducting at the aircraft alert area. And in this figure, you can see it on the northeast side there, on the west side of Van Etten Lake. That contract was awarded in September, and it'll take about 3 years to complete. We'll show the schedule here in a few minutes that Air Force provided. These are Air Force slides from the RAB. And Air Force also discussed that they would be conducting a pilot study at 3 pipes ditch to address PFAS. Next slide, please. So this shows the kind of 1-year outlook in most of the items that are going on. So you can see here that there's going to be a remedial investigation work plan addendum. We're meeting with the Air Force actually next week to discuss the data from the remedial investigation collected so far, looking at data gaps and planning next steps. Then Air Force is going to put together a document for an addendum to the work plan for the remedial investigation. And the majority of that work should be conducted spring and summer of 2023. And you can see the field work there as well. In the yellow, it's the aircraft alert area interim remedial action proposed plan. There's the schedule for that starting in November, ending in March, with a public meeting planned in March. Currently, Air Force and EGLE have only had preliminary discussions, no official meetings yet on that interim remedial action, but we look forward to doing that in the new year with the Air Force. And you can see the remainder of the schedule. There will be a ROD, or record of decision, generated for that interim remedial action, and then the design and work plan before implementation. You can also see in green the pilot study work plan and implementation, and then the next 4 RAB dates, or next 3 RAB dates now. Next slide. And then you can see here, and this kind of shows some of the things that are ongoing, and then where we're falling in the circular process for that long-term remedial action for the site. And so we're still in the RI fieldwork collection phase, and the RI report in 2023 and 2024. And the next steps are the feasibility study, the proposed plan, the record of decision, the remedial design, and then the implementation of the remedial action. You can also see the next 5-year review is coming up there at the end of 2024. Next slide, please. And again, those are Air Force slides. That was a schedule that Air Force shared with us at the last Restoration Advisory Board meeting. On the right-hand side of this slide, you can have access to their complete slide of slides and other documents from the RAB meetings. And then on the left-hand side is the Air Force administrative record. And there you can have access to a lot of Air Force documents that aren't housed on the MPART site, just so you're aware of that. And then I believe that is my last slide. So thank you. And before we move on to our next speaker, I wanted to let everyone know that Lynn Gosson is not speaking tonight for the Oscoda area sites. There's no new information. But at our next meeting, I imagine she'll have an update. So Puneet Vij from MDHHS is next. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Good evening, everyone. My name is Puneet Vij, and I'm a toxicologist with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Next slide, please. So tonight, I'll be talking about the health effects associated with PFAS and sharing with you the resampling efforts surrounding the former Wurtsmith Air Force Base. Next slide, please. So most of what we know about the toxicity of PFAS comes from studies of 2 specific compounds, PFOA and PFOS. Adverse health effects have been established in epidemiological and lab animal model studies for these PFAS. This slide provides some of the adverse health effects in humans associated with higher PFAS exposure from these epi studies, which includes reduced fertility, increasing the chance of high blood pressure or preeclampsia in pregnant women, where preeclampsia is a pregnancy complication characterized by high blood pressure, small decrease in the infant birth weight, and increasing cholesterol levels, especially total and low density lipoprotein cholesterol. Next slide, please. Increasing the chance of thyroid disease and liver damage, decrease in the immune response to vaccines, and increasing chance of cancer, especially kidney and testicular cancers. Next slide, please. The MDHHS resampling effort is to understand PFAS fluctuations in drinking water wells. In this round 3 of this resampling effort, we collected samples from 245 homes. Out of those, we received results from 126. And out of 126 results, there are 77 non-detects and 49 detections. Out of these 49 detections, there were 6 detections that exceed the MDHHS comparison values. Next slide, please. These are the mapped results from round 3 of the resampling effort. As I mentioned before, we have received results from 126 homes, and the pending results are not mapped in this figure. The blue dots, as you can see, are non-detects. White dots are detections, but less than the comparison value. And these orange dots are detections that exceed the comparison values. And these shaded areas are the areas of concern or Oscoda area sites. Next slide, please. MDHHS Oscoda Area Exposure Assessment Project is an investigation of exposure to certain chemicals in the blood and urine of residents of Oscoda area, including mercury, PCBs, and PFAS. Participants aged 12 to 17 years will have a blood sample tested for PFAS. Adults 18 years and older, and adolescents 12 to 17 years with a current residence in Oscoda Township or Osable Township are eligible to participate. Some in your community may have received a phone call already. We started with direct phone recruitment, and the phone calls were very successful with over 140 people enrolled. The next recruitment activities include mailings to households in Oscoda and Osable Township. We will be mailing in the new year, and batches of mailings will be staggered. So people will not necessarily receive their mailing at the same time. People have had appointments scheduled this fall. These appointments will continue in March 2023 and will be available in multiple months. Also, we are flexible in our appointment scheduling and will continue recruitment activities and enrollment through 2023. For more information, you can visit michigan.gov/DEHbio and then click on Oscoda Area Exposure Assessment for further information. If you have specific questions, you can call our number, which is 844-464-7327, or email us. And the email is mdhhs-mychem@michigan.gov. And also to check your eligibility and enrollment, you can call this number that I mentioned before. Next slide, please. These are some of the additional resources that you can use to get more information about PFAS. Thank you.
Thanks, Puneet, and thanks, Beth. So I believe we are at our question and answer portion, and I know that we have Marian Overholt. You have your hand raised, so I'm going to, looks like you should be able to unmute yourself now and ask your question. So you'll have to go into the bottom left corner of your screen and hit that actual unmute button. Yeah, there you go.
I accidentally raised my hand.
Gotcha.
Sorry.
Yep, no worries. Thank you. So we have one question. I see we have another hand raised. So we're going to get to this question here in the Q&A box. And so the question is, when will the state start using the National Academy's information from their report to ATSDR CDC? It includes risks for breast cancer.
I'm going to throw that over to Puneet if he's got any information on that.
I think I have to get back to you regarding this question. If you can send me the details, Mike, for this particular resident, I can definitely reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. So just as a reminder for folks, I'll provide all the speakers with a question and answer report. So okay. I'll make sure to pass this question along to you and you'll be able to follow up directly with that. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you.
So let's see, Christina, if you're able to unmute yourself, I see that you have your hand raised.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead whenever you're ready.
We would like to have an in-person meeting here again. I think those were discontinued during the pandemic. And we would like to have that restarted. Is that a possibility?
So I will leave that to kind of the presentation team here. I think that from my point of view, that's definitely a possibility, especially hearing from the community that that's a request. So seeing Abby nod her head as well.
Yeah, we'll definitely take that under consideration. I think one of the questions I have for this group is these meetings have been, I think, held quarterly now for quite a while. Is that the right frequency? We want to look at doing a different frequency, doing the, if we're going to go to in-person, obviously that's a commitment. We want to make sure we do it right. So if you've got any opinions on that, Christina, I'm happy to listen.
Can I speak? Am
yeah,
I still active? Okay. Sorry. Yeah, because this is very intimidating, this whole scenario here, and how you get onto this and how you ask questions and if people can hear you and not hear you. So I think that in-person meeting would be helpful for a large percentage of our population. And I'm pretty tech savvy, and this is a little bit of a challenge for me too. So also, we think that the quarterly timeframes, the meetings that you've been having are adequate, and we would like that to continue. And I do have another question as a follow-up, is how many people are on this call virtually, like myself?
Yep, so we currently have 25 folks in attendance.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thanks. So the next one that we had in the queue here was muted myself as I was trying to ask you to unmute. So Kathy, if you're able to, you can unmute yourself now.
Hello, this is Kathy Woosterbar.
Hi, Kathy.
So I want to follow up on that question that Chris just asked in terms of frequency of meetings. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I think that our community might find an annual
Hey, Kathy.
in-person meeting valuable, since it's, since we do have a lot going on. I think that having the state team come at some point, maybe in around the same time frame as a RAB or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and considering this exposure assessment that we have going on, it's really important to our community.
Yep.
And I'm wondering about the report from the state tonight in terms of the information. I feel like we didn't get a whole lot of EGLE information. Is there anything from like the RAB that could be, I saw the timelines, those were really helpful. But anything else that the community should be updated on? It seems like a really light report here tonight.
Hey, Kathy, this is Beth with EGLE. And as far as Wurtsmith, right now, we're kind of in a, we're more or less waiting to have this meeting with the Air Force on the remedial investigation to really understand. We just got the rest of the data literally today for our meeting next week. So we're trying to get up to speed on the data that we just received, and then really take a look at that and understand, where Air Force is going next, what they're proposing in their RI addendum. I know our management plan to, have a brief conversation on the unresolved remedial investigation comments letter. And so I think that'll be in the works near future as well. And we'll also discuss that in the extent that we can at that meeting next week that we have with Air Force, the remedial investigation. I'm trying to think. We did receive the BCT minutes, the draft BCT minutes from September from Air Force. We turned them around with our comments back in the same day. So that's back with Air Force again. Off the top of my head, I don't remember if Steve Willis sent those out as final yet. He might have over the long weekend. But if not, we'll be following up with him. We have our next VCT tomorrow, and that is really from, we had that one in September, and then the next one we're having is tomorrow. So that's those are kind of the major updates. We've been talking internally on some of the items that Mark Henry, the community RAB co-chair, brought up for Wurtsmith. We've been talking internally on some of the technical points that he has brought up. So we'll be prepared to discuss some of those items and with the Air Force next week.
Okay. Thank you, Beth, for expanding a little bit. Just for the sake of maybe people who have not been on these calls before and they're not sure what the BTC is, that's a base team closure. I think that's what the acronym is.
Yeah, I apologize for that. Yep. So it's actually like the BRAC base realignment and closure team.
No, no. BTC is base team, yeah, it's specific. BRAC is, yeah, has a, but BTC is the specific meeting. And I bring this up and I'm being technical about it because it is a meeting that the township is not included in. And I'm going to follow along with the question about the concerns with the wastewater lagoon. And there was a recent meeting in the township about whether the remediation division is aware of the wastewater lagoon concerns on the plumes. And if Beth, if you could clarify whether you are aware of what those concerns are and if the remediation division has any next steps related to it.
Oh, I can tell you that we do communicate with the water resources. So I'm from the Remediation and Redevelopment Division. And we do communicate with the Water Resources Division as they work with Oscoda Township on the wastewater treatment plant. We're also in conversation with, that is one of the items that's being investigated in the remedial investigation by Air Force. And so I know that that has been a concern and to have a potential interim remedial action in that area. And so as we stated at the RAB, I know this is, one of those areas. Previously, our division director, Mike Neller, actually a couple of years ago now, wrote a letter about potential interim remedial actions. And one of those items were the sludges from the former wastewater treatment plant. And so we're meeting with, I know you keep hearing about this meeting next week with Air Force, but we plan to meet with Air Force again to kind of go over the data they've collected and review it, discuss data gaps and next steps. And then, so one of the things that EGLE plans to do after that meeting is really take a look at the site again and see if, in our opinion, there are areas that could have an interim remedial action right now, and kind of an assessment of where they are in the priority scheme if things do have to be prioritized and things like that. So we are aware of the community's interest in that. If there's something specific from a meeting, I'm not sure if we're aware of that, and we can reach out to Oscoda Township.
Yes. So Beth, yeah, it was sort of a it was a public meeting, but it wasn't publicized, it wasn't anyways, it was a small meeting. And I think there were questions on the board members' part whether the remediation division thought that this issue was a concern. It was a concern. And so I'm wondering if you could say whether this specific, the beds on the plumes are concerns for the remediation division.
Sure. I mean, overall, the Oscoda wastewater township plant is a concern for us, and our water resources division has been evaluating that. With Oscoda Township, we're also aware that that some of this may be this historical contamination by use from Air Force. That's why Air Force is also investigating this in the remedial investigation. So I guess overall, the wastewater treatment plant is a concern of ours.
Okay, well, thank you very much for expanding the information. I appreciate it. And I do appreciate Puneet covering the exposure assessment information. Our community is very excited about this project, and we look forward to great participation for the state.
Thank you, Kathy.
Great, thank you, Kathy. I know we've got a couple questions that are in the Q&A box, and then, oops, I thought we had a hand up, but it just disappeared. So we've got one comment here that maybe I'll read out and then see if there's anyone has any response. So this comment here says over 40 million people draw drinking water from the Great Lakes, including over 5 million from Lake Huron. How can it be possible that hundreds of millions of gallons of highly contaminated water has flowed unabated out of Clark's Marsh for decades? And this is not even something that has raised to at least some, and this is not even something that has raised to at least something that would have had an RI. Clearly, this is unabated flow that will have long-term impact even with dilution on drinking water for millions of people. So any response from the team on that comment question, and how, you know, we've got the folks drawing drinking water from the Great Lakes, and then this flow from Clark's Marsh for decades?
I'm going to let Beth start and then I can help out. You want to say anything specific about that one, Beth?
Sure. I mean, I think our Water Resources Division should weigh in, since I know they did a study of Huron Shores water intake and the water surrounding it recently. But yeah, I mean, currently we are looking at former Wurtsmith Air Force Base. Air Force is the lead agency, we're the support agency. So the whole base from AFFF contamination is currently being investigated. Then part of that will also be a study of where that groundwater contamination is entering the surface water bodies, or potentially entering the surface water bodies. In some areas we know it is, and in some areas we just need that data to confirm. But we expect, so I mean, that's part of it that I have. I know the Huron Shores water system is tested, and my understanding is the most recent results have been non-detect. And I think Water Resources could probably talk a little bit about that study and others on the sampling from the intake water supply.
Yes, this is Jeff Rhodes from the Surface Water Assessment Section, toxicologist. We recently tested nearshore water for Lake Huron. Results came back for PFOS at or below the reporting limit of 2 ppt. Additionally, we've done some offshore testing of Lake Huron, and results varied, but it was typically non-detect or below the reporting limit.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. Abby, I know you threw it out to Beth first. Did you have anything to add to that?
No, I think the intent of the question is valid, or the intent of the comment is valid, but that's what a robust remedial investigation is all about, that the Air Force is underway with, and that this team will continue to monitor.
Great.
So I think it's a good comment.
So we have one last question here before we'll turn back to the raised hand. So the comment here is that this individual has a PFAS product, JMCC water filters, whole house water filter that is NSF ANSI 53 compliant, but the Michigan state content is lower and there are no known tests to meet those standards. So the question is if you know, it's asking the state to adopt the 53 standard to move forward with selling that product to residents.
That's a great question. I don't know exactly what the 53 standard refers to, if that's the efficacy level for the filters to remove PFOA, PFOS, and other PFAS. But yeah, Michigan is not certifying. We need to be able to provide certified filters, and we usually look towards you know, the NSF certification for that. As far as lower standards, yes, we've got drinking water standards that are currently below the 70 parts per trillion that those filters used to be certified for. But I think there'll be a lot of you know, additional stuff coming out once EPA puts out their MCLs, which we expect those proposed MCLs to come out yet this year, we're promised. And so I would expect by the end of the calendar year, we should see that. And then I would be surprised if NSF doesn't come up with something a little bit lower by then. But
great, thank you. Oh, Kevin, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, just briefly, I know NSF was working on a update to those PFAS requirements through their joint committee to include not only PFAS, but several other PFAS commonly seen within drinking waters. I don't know if that's been finalized, but I know that was in discussion and they were pretty close last time I had heard to getting something in front of their NSF joint committees. Again, those are ANSI standards, so they do have a multi-party joint committee that oversees those development of those standards, which includes industry, citizen groups, as well as NSF and other certifiers. But yeah, so stay tuned on that. I think I think it's something's coming out pretty soon with that. But that's just from my NSF background.
Yeah, and I would guess that they're waiting to see what EPA is going to do before they come out with their next revision. So yeah, thank you, Kevin. Kevin worked for NSF, so thanks for the in-house information. And then I see Kathy's got a comment here. Please clarify non-detectable related to lab's ability to detect new EPA interim levels less than 1 part per billion. So yeah, obviously the analytical quantitation methods are around 2 parts per billion. We know there are some instruments that can go lower, but it's all flagged. And so reliable data that we know is valid is around 2 parts per billion. So I think anything below that, is a scientific guess at this point until we can come up with better instrumentation. But a part per trillion is pretty good. Yes. Did I say something other than trillion? Sorry, Kathy.
Great. Thank you, Abby. So Christina, if you want to unmute yourself again, I see your hand has been raised for a minute. So thank you.
Yes, I have a question about the exposure assessment. I want to know, I guess it would be the toxicologist to answer this, if he considers, I heard 140 participants more or less from the area and 400 and something contacts made. So that will be a response rate of about 30%. Is that correct?
Yes, for now.
Okay. Do you consider that an acceptable response rate? Is that going to give you the enough of a sample to do any studies on?
We are going to reach out to more folks. This was just via phone call. Now we are going to reach out via our recruitment method. So we are expecting more.
I understand. But do you, for your study purposes and to have results that are valid, do you need a larger response rate or not? Is 30% adequate?
I have to get back to you on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then my other question is about the people who did not choose to participate. What have been some of the barriers people have identified for you to participation?
Regarding the barriers also, I have to get back to you on this one as well.
Okay, that would help because we are trying to, we're trying to spread the word about the study and get people to feel comfortable about it. And I hate to say it, it's really, really terrible, but the financial incentive is a big part of it, especially here because we are not in a, we're in a depressed socioeconomic rural area. So putting that up front may increase your response rate a little bit. Some of the, there's a lot of people here who already know what this is all about, but there's also a lot of people who do not for a variety of reasons. So I think that if you led with that and then gave all the information after that, you may have a better response rate. I'm saying this because I was witness to one of the phone calls, which I have to compliment you all. You all have done, the MDHHS has done a fabulous job with communicating with people. Once you get in there, what's happening, what's going to happen. I have no complaints there. I'm just wondering how we can increase the response rate, remove the barriers to the response rate so that we have enough participation so that you have valid results when this study is completed.
Definitely, you have a really good point, and I can touch base with the team, all those folks who are making phone calls, and definitely I can get back to you regarding the barriers.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Puneet, refresh my memory. How long? I thought the study just kicked off like a few weeks ago. Is this?
Yeah, it's been, I think, 4 weeks, if I'm not wrong. September
Okay.
20, October 26th.
Will they, I thought I had heard, and you can correct me again, that they were going to continue appointments. They continue appointments this year and then make another set of appointments for next year,
For next year.
next spring, so that they can get as many participants as possible.
Yes, and just to clarify, this is an exposure assessment, not a health study. Just wanted to clarify there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. How will you get that information to us? So you're going to get back with us?
So I will get all those questions and who asked those questions from Mike. So that's how I will get back to you.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get your email, and then Puneet and can get back to you and to Kathy on those health study questions.
Yep. Yeah, and Puneet, there was a question that just came in, and I'll maybe coordinate with you to make sure we invite the right folks, but making sure that we have, or at least invite one of those study leads to the next town hall, just so that they are available to answer questions that come up.
Yes, we'll do that.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, Kathy, let me see if you can unmute yourself there, Kathy.
Hello again. Can you help me? Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Actually, I just want to clarify some of the information. It sounds like Abby and Puneet shared that I'm on the community advisory team for the exposure assessment. And it's been expressed that the study will be going through the oh gosh, I don't know how to when interest wanes. They will discontinue the study when interest wanes in terms of participation. They the study leads were not really able to quantify that, but they expect it to go through the summer because they want to be able to capture those 12 to 17-year-old participants that may be not able to make appointments through the spring. So, and then also those seasonal people that might not be around, the rest of the year. So it will be going through next summer also. So I really wanted to make that clear to the community that's listening.
Thanks for the clarification, Kathy. Yeah. I think usually those, in my experience for some of these other exposure assessments and health studies, that it seems like they do enrollment for quite a long time, like a good 9 to 12 months. But I hesitate to say that because I don't have that direct information. So thanks for clarifying that.
So it looks like I've got one more question, was a second parter from an earlier question. The question is related to the filters again. So asking, currently giving out sink filters only, and any thoughts, consideration on whole house options that would be available, or why those aren't available.
I can take this one, Mike.
Yep, thanks.
So the main way for the general population to get exposed to PFAS is by eating or drinking contaminated food or water. So so only drinking water needs filtering for ingestion. And our point of use filters, they are working efficiently based on our pre and post filter results. So so that's going to that's how it will be recommending PPOU filters.
Great, thank you. We do have another hand raised. So William Palmer, if you want to try to unmute yourself. Awesome.
Okay, am I coming through?
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay, I'd like to go back to the conversation you had about the wastewater treatment plant and the sediment beds. As everyone knows, I guess, the township operates the wastewater treatment plant on a permit issued by EGLE Water Resource Division. And a couple of years ago, when they detected PFAS coming from the effluent of the lagoon system, we were charged by EGLE to track down where the source of that PFAS. So over 2 years, we hired our engineering firm, Fleiss and Vanderbrink, F&V, to do that study. And they have completed that study. I believe EGLE has been provided with that study. I also believe that the Air Force has been provided with the results of that study. And what came out of that was that a high concentration of PFAS was located near one of the hangars out there where the Air Force, I guess, had stored or used the AFFF, and then also in the sewer lines out in that area where the AFFF was pumped to the lagoon system. And I know Mike Neller said that he has a high concern for the highly contaminated sediment beds where the effluent from the lagoon system goes. But I think it would be critical that we need to clean up the area where the PFAS is coming from that's going into the lagoon system would obviously need to be cleaned up first. And I know Beth, and I hate to call on Beth because you're really struggling with your voice, and I'm sorry for that. But in your meeting with the Air Force, I would hope that the issue of the cleanup of the PFAS that's around, and I believe it's Hangar 7 in that area, could be undertaken. My understanding is from our engineers that I've spoken to, it's a relatively minor cleanup. There's not a lot involved in making that happen. So I would hope in your upcoming meetings with the Air Force that the study that was done by F&V could be discussed. To clean that source of PFAS the hangar so that we can, because it wouldn't make sense to do anything with those sediment beds until we eliminate the PFAS that's going into the lagoon system.
Yeah, Bill, I understand your point on that. And just so you guys know, we did have comments on the initial work plan for the remedial investigation that a more robust sanitary sewer and stormwater investigation are conducted during the remedial investigation by Air Force. So we'll definitely keep that in mind, and in our, definitely that wastewater will be discussed in our meetings next week.
Okay, thank you, Beth.
Great, thank you. So we have a question here. Would the state consider providing cyclopure filters for use in Brita pitchers?
I can take this one, Mike.
Great, thanks.
So our recommendation is to provide, to use certified filters that we know are really effective in reducing PFAS by 96 to 97% in your drinking water. And that's why we are recommending Aquasana POU filter. I'm not sure about this cyclopure filters, if they are certified or not. So for now, yeah, it's going to be Aquasana POU filter.
Mhm.
Great, thank you. So the comment to that was that yes, they are certified. So Puneet, it may be at this point that we haven't had a chance to look at that. So I'll let you have any further comments, but it may just be something that we have to look at before we can provide an answer if we haven't had a chance to review all that information.
Yeah, I can look at that, and the main thing is whether they are of similar efficacy or more than that. So I can look into that.
Great, thank you. Beyond drinking water, please confirm or speak to if high levels beyond acceptable rates are found in Cedar Creek. There is currently no known remediation as you cannot put any chemicals or otherwise in Michigan lakes. Is that correct? So that might be two different questions here.
Yeah, and I would have to look up and see what the levels we've got for surface water in Cedar Lake. So maybe Jeff, do you know off the top of your head, or anyone on our team know what those levels look like in Cedar Lake? Because I don't off the top of my head.
No.
Okay.
So I would, this might be another one where I'll send you a note back. I see your second note you sent here, so I appreciate that. But I will make sure to share this question and we can get you a written response. We'll send you an email when we have a chance to look at those, that information.
I can share real quickly. We do have one sample from Cedar Lake from 2019.
This is Amanda.
Can you speak to that,
and
Amanda?
From what I recall of samples that have been collected from the lake, we haven't had anything that has exceeded our groundwater surface water interface protection criteria.
Yeah, it looks pretty low. The concentrations in this sample from 2019 look very, very low. Non-detects, it looks like there might have been one slight hit of a PFBA, but that is it. Everything else is non-detect. So
yeah, and I think there have been some fish samples that have been collected from Cedar Lake as well that have also been below criteria. I don't know if Brandon Armstrong is on. He might be able to speak to that if he is.
Yeah, so we collected perch, bluegill, and pumpkin seed from Cedar Lake in 2019. The bluegill and pumpkin seed had non-detectable levels of PFOS, and then the perch ranged from 5 to 21 part per billion PFOS. I know the bluegill and pumpkin seed data are in the current Eat Safe Fish Guide. The yellow perch data are currently being reviewed by MDHHS to determine if a consumption advisory is needed.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds like so that was at least some information here, and I appreciate that. Again, I think we may have some more that we want to send you. But again, I'm going to share all of these questions with the whole team. So if there is anything else that would help supplement the information that was just shared, we'll make sure to send that along. But I do appreciate the question and the clarifications that you've sent into the Q&A. So I have a question here, and it's a couple questions, but I'm going to kind of read through it because they're all kind of related here. So, does the city of Oscoda have a consulting engineering firm? If so, what's the protocol for piloting different processes that can alleviate PFAS to the levels that have been diagnosed? Heard that the granular activated carbon process is acceptable for PFAS removal, but what about the economics? So, looking at other options, ion exchange, reverse osmosis, etc., that could be less expensive over a longer term. So this might be more, a question for the city of Oscoda, or if anybody has any other insight to those processes. And I don't know if we have anyone from the city on that I could, if they feel up to talking.
No, if we do either. I can start if there's no one else on that is with the city. Normally that kind of process would be up to a city or municipality to go through that process of working with their engineering firm to work on, a feasibility study for what those short-term capital costs are going to be versus long-term O&M operation and maintenance over the lifespan, given the rate of removal and how much loading you've got, what the flow rate's going to be. So obviously you're going to need to do engineering on that. So I don't know if I'm assuming the city of Oscoda has an engineering firm, but I don't know off the top of my head. So, and that's not something the state approves or would get involved with. That's up to the city to do that.
And we've got a couple hand raised, so I'm going to go to them in just a second. But there was a comment in here that as we were talking about Cedar Lake, that some of the sampling for the foam, it sounds like was at 7,200 part per trillion. And so if I apologize if that got mentioned earlier, and I missed it as I was scanning here. So Chuck, I'm going to see if you can unmute yourself. So Chuck, if you want to try and unmute yourself, I see your hand is raised. And I do see that you actually just sent a question into the Q&A. So I don't know if it was the same question. So maybe I'll read that off. And then if you can unmute yourself and have anything else to add, you're welcome to do that. When and how can we retest the levels in Cedar Lake? What is the process to request current testing?
I'm going to throw that over to Brandon or Jeff because there is a process, and I'm not remembering which EGLE page it's on. So Brandon, do you know off the top of your head?
I can answer that.
No, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, you can submit a targeted monitoring request through EGLE to our surface water assessment section. And then we can go through and targeted monitoring requests have already been submitted for the upcoming field season of 2023. But I think we should have 2024 targeted monitoring requests online soon. And you could submit a target monitoring request that way. I can send you a link in the chat or via email.
That would be great. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. So not hearing from Chuck yet. I'm going to see if William, if you're able to, you can go ahead and try and unmute yourself again. Yeah, great.
Yeah, I would like to respond. The gentleman asked a question about the township. I wasn't quite sure what the question was. The difference was asking about the GAC or the ion exchange. But I would like to say, and I'm a trustee on the Oscoda Township Board, but I'm not speaking on behalf of the board by any means, but just my personal knowledge. The township does have two engineering firms that we hire. We have a Rowe Engineering is our in-house engineering firm, and Fleiss and Vanderbrink F&B is the engineering firm that operates our wastewater treatment system. Currently, the township does not have any processing plants for removing PFAS. That is all being handled by the Air Force. So, and if in the future there were a problem with the drinking water, that would come under the Huron Shores Regional Utility Authority, who operates the water system for Oscoda, Asable, Tawas, East Tawas, and Baldwin Township. So they would be charged with any filtering process at the water treatment plant that would have to take place. So I don't know if that answers the question. I wasn't quite sure what the overall question was concerning the township of Oscoda.
No, and feel free, whoever the individual who asked that to send any follow-ups. But I think the question was, what's that process look like, and are there people involved at looking at that? Obviously there's lots of options that exist, and so making sure that there are folks on board to have those discussions, and not just picking one, sticking with it, and no matter what the economics are. So I appreciate that that insight that you were able to provide there.
Yeah, we are having because the Air Force has proposed to slip line one of the stormwater lines that they're using to transport effluent from the Mission Street pump and treat plant. And the Mission Street is an ion exchange treatment process, and that the effluent from that goes into the storm sewer system, and that goes down to Van Etten Creek. And there are some problems with that line, and our engineering firm, Rowe Engineering, is looking at what is going to be needed to take care of that line, and putting that information together for an RFP, which the Air Force has agreed they will pay for once a contractor has been hired to do that project. So Row Engineering is working on that, and as it stands right now, we don't have it in writing yet from the Air Force, so I'm a little nervous about that, but they verbally have said they will take care of all those costs for taking care of that Mission Street storm sewer line.
Excellent.
Doesn't
Thanks.
answer the question on the central plant line, which they're also using and currently pumping about 1.4 million gallons a day through that storm sewer line. So we've yet to resolve how they're going to compensate the township for that use, but that is in the works as well, I believe.
All right. It's good information. Thanks, Bill.
Sure.
Good, thank you. So I'll see, Chuck, you still have your hand up. Are you able to unmute yourself if you still have something? Otherwise, I will. Hopefully, we got your question answered in the Q&A box. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and lower your hand then, just to keep it clean. If you do want to raise your hand, feel free to, and we'll try and come back to you. Brandon and Jeff, there's a comment. I don't know if you can see the Q&A box about the actual request form into the website. Are you able to provide any insight? Just I know that there's processes for everything that we do to make sure that the right people get notified of the request as it comes in. And so, again, somebody's going to have to, the requests will have to go through online. I'm not sure what the WRD system looks like to do that. If there's any insight into that or that process.
Yeah, so so our targeted monitoring requests are due in late October for external requests. Then the targeted monitoring team reviews those requests, and it depends on funding when the request gets selected for monitoring the following year. So that's what Jeff mentioned, that the targeted monitoring 2023 requests have already been submitted. We're in the process of reviewing those now for 2023 sampling. Then I see the question is, can we review that request right now since we're here? For as far as Cedar Lake, keep in mind that we do have statewide fish consumption advice in place. So some of those species that weren't tested from Cedar Lake, there's already consumption advice in place for mercury. It takes a pretty high PFAS concentration to offset the mercury concentration, especially in those higher trophic levels, those bass and higher predator type species. So we don't really see that kind of concentration showing up in Cedar Lake that would offset the current mercury consumption advice for Cedar Lake.
Just to chime in, our last WRD's last surface water sample collected from Cedar Lake was in July of 2019. All analytes, excluding PFBA, were detected below the reporting limit, which is approximately 2 parts per trillion. The majority of those analytes were actually below the limit of detection. PFBA was detected at 6 ppt. So in regards to surface water concentrations of PFAS, those values are below anthropogenic background.
Great. Thank you for the clarification, both of you. All right, Chuck, I tried to just send you a ask to unmute notification there. So let's see, I see your hand up again.
He's having trouble.
Yep. So Chuck, if you want to, I'm going to see if I can ask you to unmute one more time. Otherwise, I will, I'll make sure that we have somebody reach out to you. I think I've got your email here. And if you have any questions or concerns, but if you should be able to unmute yourself in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen by clicking on that microphone. but otherwise, I apologize that this is not working here tonight. Oh, he put his hand down. Abby, anything else from you?
No, I think that Kathy, you and I can follow up after this. I think that, you know, there will continue to be ongoing monitoring for the lakes in the area. So, you know, I think given the data set that we've got, we'll continue to keep this in mind, and we'll just make sure that all of these lakes continue on the list for regular monitoring. I think that's where, you know, I don't think there's Cedar Lake is necessarily going to be the one that is going to be the worst, given what's going on in Van Etten as well. So, but we, why don't I reach out to you, Kathy, and we can make sure that I'm understanding all of the requests.
Great. Thank you. Well, I don't see any more questions coming into the Q&A and no more hands raised. So, right under the buzzer here. So, Greg, let me see. Greg, can you unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Super. Yeah, I guess I'd just like to circle back to Clark's Marsh and the affluent coming out of Clark's Marsh into the Oscoda River via the Three Pipes ditch and other avenues, but particularly Three Pipes. I believe, and I've seen a couple of numbers that the state took, but I think they stopped bothering to even sample Clark's Marsh or the Three Pipes outflow because the levels were so incredibly high. They didn't need to keep measuring them. So I guess my question is, I understand that in Lake Huron, near the mouth, you know, we're only seeing 1 or 2 or sometimes 5 parts per trillion. But when you have, you know, literally billions of gallons of water going out a day that are at 40,000 parts per trillion into the river, I think that most of the indigenous fish are considered do not eat in the river, that this isn't a concern for human health, and it isn't even being considered for remedial action to try to curb some of that going out. And I've heard this from the Air Force. They said we have to worry about human receptors first, blah, blah, blah. It all makes sense, but now decades have gone by where I think a simple solution could have captured a significant amount of this, and we're not even considering it years later. It just mystifies me.
Beth, do you want to respond with what the, you know, the Air Force is doing or not doing in response to Clark's Marsh?
Oh, sure. I can respond on that. And then Water Resources can follow up on their answer from the RAB on the outfalls and how often they're sampled. So right now, Clark's Marsh, there is an interim remedial action in place at FTO2. The remedial investigation that is ongoing, sorry again about my voice, it's not complete in that area. So the sampling near the Oscoda River that was planned has not been completed yet, down gradient of Clark's Marsh, and really kind of along there, even when you get into Tucker Swamp and locations like that. That hasn't been completed yet during the remedial investigation. So that's kind of, we're just waiting on that data to supplement what has been taken in the past. And then again, you know, Air Force does have a pilot study planned at Three Pipes Drain to address PFAS. Really, that looks like it's going to be, we have no more details than what they provided at what Air Force provided at the Restoration Advisory Board. What it looks like, it's going to be a sorbent that will absorb PFAS kind of in that bed there along the drain, but Again, other than what was spoken about at the RAB, we have no further details on that. And then the pilot study, it's not really so much a remedy, it's more, could this work as a remedy? As you're planning for that final remedy, and it's something that could be evaluated in a feasibility study later on down the road. And then I'm not sure if there's any response on that, or I'll kick it over to Charlie Bauer.
Yeah, I don't have any current information on that. So I think that we'll take that question and bring it back to our group and see what monitoring has been done in that area. I don't know if SWAS has done anything there, but I don't think, I don't have any updates right now on that. So I'll take that and bring it back.
Yeah, I guess the only recent sampling we did was this year. We got fish out of the Oscoda River, shot from US 23 up to Van Etten Creek. So we'll be getting more fish data from the Oscoda this year. And then we did do the watershed PFAS sampling. Jeff, if you want to speak to that.
Yes, as Brandon mentioned, we did sample the Oscoda watershed, and we hope to get those results out shortly for review.
Great. Thank you all for your comments there, and Greg for the question. So Abby, I always kind of defer to you if you want to do a website run through. I know this crowd is very familiar.
It seems like everybody here is pretty familiar with that. Let's see what you got up. Yeah, so I think that obviously there is a lot of information on our PFAS response website, our MPART website. At the bottom of the slide there, you see the MPART Geographic Information System, which is where the surface water sample results for Cedar Creek. I found that on our GIS layer there. So you can definitely look at that. Is there another slide?
I think just the thank you is next.
Just the thank you. So yeah. And we will be talking, I'll talk with the team here when we get done and in the coming weeks to talk about what the next meeting will look like. We've heard you guys would like to do something in person. And so maybe we'll do a variation on that. But I think that's, obviously it's much more effective in person. We all know that. But it's a large effort to get a big team up there every quarter. So we just want to be efficient and make sure we're doing what's best for everybody. So thanks for everybody for sharing your questions, for your time. And thanks to Beth for a round of applause for Beth and her squeaky voice. Hopefully she feels better than she sounds tonight.
Great. Yes. And I will be, yeah, way to go, Beth. I'll be posting, like I said, a recording of this meeting and sharing these questions. So expect, especially a handful of you, expect some follow-up notes. So I've got my notes here and I'll share it with the team as quickly as possible. So thanks again, everybody. Thanks for coming out this evening and participating. I really appreciate it, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.